What really is happiness and why do we chase it after all these time? It's a question as old as humanity itself. Since the beginning of human civilization, people have tried to categorize, comprehend, and eventually find happiness. However, what does it actually mean to be happy? Is it a mental state, a transient feeling, or is it a lifetime adventure? Great minds have smiled their way through history, offering their own solutions to this riddle. Ideologies such as hedonism, which holds that pleasure is the ultimate good, or Stoicism, which promotes peace and acceptance, Existentialism, which places a strong emphasis on personal accountability and freedom, and Buddhism, which imparts the detachment from materialistic wants road. Every one of these viewpoints provides a different lens through which we might see the quest for pleasure. They put our assumptions to the test and ask us to re-evaluate our definition of happiness. We may find that happiness is far more complicated than we first believed when we delve more into these ideas. Envision living a life devoid of suffering and full of joy. This is bliss according to hedonism. The ancient Greek philosophical approach known as hedonism asserts that pleasure is the ultimate good and appropriate goal of human existence. Hedonism, in its most basic form, links happiness to the pursuit and enjoyment of pleasure, as well as the avoidance of suffering. This viewpoint is in line with our innate need for comfort, fulfillment, and happiness as humans. Who doesn't like a delicious dinner, a nice laugh, or a carefree day at the beach after all? However, let's go a bit farther. Hedonistic philosophy goes beyond simply reveling in transient surface-level pleasures. It may also refer to the search for deeper kinds of fulfillment, such emotional connection, creative expression, and intellectual stimulation. The ultimate objective is still to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, even in various forms. Still, some people disagree that hedonism is a route to happiness. The idea that living a life focused just on pursuing pleasure might result in a shallow, self-centered lifestyle is one of the most frequent complaints. Where does empathy, compassion, and meaningful, long-lasting relationships fit in when we're always on the lookout for the next big thing and trying to fulfill our personal desires? Furthermore, isn't there anything meriting the development that frequently results from taking on obstacles and suffering adversity? Hedonism is also criticized for its tendency to provide ephemeral pleasures that are contingent on outside factors. Because of this, living a life that is solely focused on pursuing it might leave us open to disappointment and discontent when those pleasures eventually fade or become unattainable. Therefore, hedonism has inherent complications, even if it offers an enticing, logical path to enjoyment. It challenges us to think about what forms of pleasure are actually gratifying, how far we should go to prevent suffering, and if living a meaningful life entails more than just feeling good. Although hedonism elevates pleasure to the pinnacle of happiness, it begs the question, is it possible for contentment to come from a life of pleasure alone? What if finding satisfaction in whatever life has to offer instead of chasing pleasure is the key to happiness? This inquiry takes us into the area of Stoicism, an ancient Greek philosophy that is still widely accepted today. Stoicism advises us to accept and be satisfied with the fact that a lot of things in life are out of our control, and to find enjoyment in those things. It imparts the understanding that cultivating virtue and intelligence is the better route to happiness than pursuing pleasure. Imagine a stoic person. Despite the storm, they remain steadfast and unfazed by the vagaries of fate. They accept with composure that both happiness and sadness, success and failure, are inevitable in life. They understand that happiness should come from the inside out, and not depend on outside factors. However, detractors of Stoicism exist, just like with any other philosophy. Some contend that Stoicism may breed apathy and a lack of ambition by encouraging acceptance and serenity. They imply that Stoics may grow apathetic and accept their status in life without making an effort to reform or advance. However, ambition is not always incompatible with Stoicism. All it asks for is a new sort of ambition, one that is inwardly directed toward personal development and enhancement. Even if a Stoic does not hold worldly items or outward successes in high regard, they might nonetheless aspire for greater things. They aspire to morality, knowledge, and the capacity to maintain composure in the face of adversity. Stoicism serves as a reminder that although we have little control over the outside world, we do have power over how we react to it. It exhorts us to look for happiness in the permanent qualities of knowledge, patience, and acceptance, rather than in the transient pleasures of this life. According to Stoicism, the way to happiness is to find satisfaction with the situation we are in. But can we truly be content if we don't aim higher? Let's keep these queries in mind as we go more into the many philosophical viewpoints on the pursuit of pleasure. Could the secret to happiness lie in living really, despite life's absurdities? Now let's turn to the 20th century intellectual movement known as Existentialism. Existentialists contend that there is no higher power or predetermined meaning to existence, and that it is meaningless by nature. But some contend that just this absence of divine guidance gives us a remarkable freedom, the ability to define our own meaning and purpose. This way of thinking exhorts us to follow our own paths, live truly, and use our free will. It's about accepting our uniqueness, staying loyal to who we are, and owning up to our mistakes. Existentialists contend that by doing this, we are able to choose our own route to fulfillment. For them, contentment is not something to be sought for, but rather the result of living truly and freely. However, there are many who disagree with existentialism. Some contend that this worldview is prone to readily veering toward hopelessness and nihilism. They question, what's to keep us from sinking into an existential abyss where nothing matters and everything seems pointless if life is meaningless? Existentialism does not, in fact, discount the possibility of despair, but it presents an alternative viewpoint, namely, that hopelessness might serve as a stimulant for genuineness. Realizing how ridiculous life is can inspire us to live more authentically and freely. In this regard, existentialism does not guarantee a happy ending. Rather, it implies that a deep and long-lasting sense of fulfillment can result from authenticity and individual independence. Existentialism challenges us to face life's absurdity head-on, accept it, and take delight in our ability to forge our own route. It's a challenge to live really in the face of life's inherent meaninglessness, a call to action. Existentialism pushes us to pursue authenticity as a source of happiness. But in a society that frequently appears meaningless, are we really able to find joy? Is the best way to happiness detachment from desire? A query that brings up the Buddhist view of happiness. Buddhism holds that detachment from desire is the path to pleasure, as desire is said to be the source of all suffering. Buddhism has a distinctive viewpoint on the search for happiness. It teaches that letting go of our attachments is what leads to pleasure instead of obtaining our desires. This is not to argue that we should give up on our goals and aspirations altogether. Rather, Buddhism invites us to realize the transience of desire and to comprehend its essence. The core of Buddhist philosophy is the idea of impermanence. Everything in life is ephemeral and prone to change, including our wishes. We may break away from the cycle of want and discontent and reach a level of serenity and calm by acknowledging its impermanence. However, what does this actual separation mean? Does it suggest a life without enthusiasm, indifference, or disinterest? Not at all. In Buddhism, detachment does not mean being indifferent. It's about realizing what our genuine wants are and not letting them rule our actions. It's about living life to the fullest, without being constrained by our dislikes or wants. This idea of separation has, nonetheless, drawn criticism. Some contend that adopting this strategy might result in a loss of drive or interest in life. They argue that our passions and aspirations are what propel us, inspire us to work toward betterment, and give our life purpose. Though there is truth to this critique, it's vital to keep in mind that Buddhism does not support the total eradication of desire. Instead, it motivates us to acknowledge the fleeting nature of our wants, view them with awareness, and resist letting them control our level of enjoyment. So can we thus achieve pleasure by letting up of our desires? Buddhism says that we are able to. We may break the cycle of yearning and discontent and discover a more profound, long-lasting kind of enjoyment by realizing and embracing the transient nature of our desires. Buddhism exhorts us to let up of our pursuit of pleasure. But is happiness truly possible without passion and desire? Maybe the solution is to understand desire and establish a happy medium rather than to suppress it. Happiness is a complicated and multidimensional notion, as we have seen. It functions similarly to a prism, refracting light into a rainbow of hues, each of which stands for a distinct philosophical viewpoint. While hedonism takes great delight in pursuing pleasure, Stoicism finds fulfillment in acceptance and fortitude. Conversely, existentialism promotes individuality and genuineness. Buddhism, on the other hand, provides a detachment and mindfulness-based route to happiness. Every philosophy views happiness through a different prism. However, they are all united by the pursuit of a purposeful existence. Their routes diverge yet ultimately lead to the same destination. These ideologies serve as a helpful reminder that happiness isn't a universal term. It's a very personal path that is molded by our goals, experiences, and beliefs. Maybe the goal of pursuing happiness isn't to find a solution that works for everyone, but rather to take multiple routes and figure out what makes each of us happy on a personal level.